Alina, this book is something else. Every she's saying that the things that that stand out to you, the things that you want to repeat, and all of these things into your life. Listen, everything I've
Everything
read so
stands
far.
out.
So I break it down into portions that I can manage.
This really was transformative.
And good evening. Welcome again, Achievers. Welcome. So excited to be here once again as we get into Book Club Conversations, Series 6. A combinative effort between VisionWorks Solutions and Launchpad Consultancy. We're chatting, continuing. We're 30 days in, guys, chatting about the book, The Uncommon Achiever, written by Mike Murdock. My name is Alina Lewis. I'm a business coach, an author, and an education consultant. And we have joining in this evening Uncommon Achiever. I've been teasing her in the comment section for days and weeks. Uncommon Achiever, Paula Cumberbatch. We have impact strategist Roll Rollocks and business coach and founder of Create Your Own Narrative, Simone Nickham. Hi guys, we're back. And I'm super excited because here it is. We're getting into chapter 30. That means we have one more day remaining, right? But we're not gonna cry. It's been a great experience. And chapter 30 is talking about creating a customized training program for the dreams that you're developing around you. And why I'm excited about this chapter is because while I know traditionally when we think about the idea of creating that customized training program, immediately our minds could go to the boardroom and the business. We know that the concept could apply both in your entrepreneurial journey, in your professional life, as well as in your personal life. So as I always do, I want to open the floor. I'm going to start with Simone, even as I ask her to share what stood out the most from chapter 30.
Hi, good evening to all the Uncommon Achievers. Good evening, Alina, Roll, and Paula. So, as I read it through, what stood out for me was these lines that said, successful businesses have employees who are informed, well trained, and confident about carrying out their instructions. This takes time, it takes energy, it requires great patience. And immediately I thought my team would be my family. So I put in families in that statement. Successful families have persons who are informed, they're well trained, and they're confident about carrying out their purpose. It takes time, tick box for me. It takes energy, tick box for me. And it requires great patience. Tick, 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 tick. Once you have children, and for me, I was very deliberate in terms of helping them to frame the perspective that I wanted them to have of life, not to superimpose my own, but to really give them some values to guide them, to guide how they interact with others. So that's what really stood out to me in this chapter.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Simone. We inviting our guest, Paula. What stood out to you even as you took a look at chapter 30?
I think the first line, you will always remember what you teach. I think I'm a hands-on kind of person. I think that for it to always be current in my mind, I, in order to remember it, you have to, while you teach, you remember. So, I mean, for me, in my team, recently, as I shared with you earlier on, I have just embarked on a year's sabbatical to do my thing after being with a team of people for 20 years, a team of people who um, we weren't only, we didn't just work together, but we were like sisters. And sometimes that's really hard when you to find the divide, you know, to, to when you're sisters and friends and work together. And in doing the handover, one of the things that I needed to do was train people in the things that I would have done over the years. And um, so very recently, this week, they tried to contact me. So short story. And she called and she says, one of them, and she says, I need your help in doing the thing that I trained her I trained her in about 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I listened and I waited and I said, so here's what. I'm not gonna I'm not going to tell you bit by bit what I did. What we're gonna do is I'm just gonna let you walk through it, and we're gonna talk through it. But what was really good was that at the end of the day, she did it, and she did it on her own, and she was motivated. And I think that's also important. It's important to continue to to tell people how confident you how you are confident in their ability. I think that's important. And you all have done that. You all have had confidence, that it was because of the confidence you had in me in hearing over the time. And that's why I'm here tonight. So I just think that hands on is the way to go.
And we celebrate you coming on, Paula. We're celebrating you.
Thank
We're doing
you.
the quiet clap. And thank you so much for sharing
Thank you.
your takeaway role. Of course, coming in next, and certainly not the least, what would have stood out to you most from chapter 30?
Well, it's this one struck me to my core because um, this has been my life. Training and development, teaching has been my life. I have been in training and development for the better part of almost 30 years. You understand? In some way or the other, my first significant job was in training and development. And that followed me for my entire life. My father is a teacher. My mother is a teacher. Well, they all retired. I have one, two, three, four, four siblings who are into teaching and training in some way. So this has been in and around me. So the value of it always rings home. So what jumped out at me, and it's sort of like a mantra for me, is the importance of training and development, the importance, and I like to make a distinction between training and anything else. Sometimes we call presenting training, or we call a workshop, a seminar or webinar training, and I like to make the distinction that when we say training, we're going a little a little further, because if you want to see behavior change, it goes beyond just saying, hey, if you want to, Paula was talking earlier about hands-on. You literally have to put persons in a situation, role play, have them do it for themselves, give them feedback, see them do it on their own. That's what I mean when I say training. You know, a lot of times we think because we've listened to a program for over 20, 30 hours, oh yes, I was trained, you know? And I think why I harp on it so much is that I see the important when it comes to making behavioral changes, so that I think that it's something that more of us need to incorporate into our life. Simone spoke about how she was um, dealing with her children, her family, you understand? And you have to go a little further than just talking. Training is not talking. You understand? You have to go further. You have to be hands-on. You have to see them do it. You understand? They have to practice it. Practice, repetition, will bring efficiency. So those are the things that kind of jumped out at me, the importance and value of incorporating training into our lives if we're going to be striving for that time where we're going to be called uncommon achievers. It means that we have to build that level of proficiency, which means repetition, right? So I just thought that's what jumped out at me.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for sharing that. Now, here's the fun thing about these book club conversations. The fun thing is that we have some enthusiastic people who are passionate about impacting others, making change, and influencing others to be their best. So, guess what we're going to do? I know it wasn't planned, but we'll do it anyway. We're going to go into rapid fire because I want to get into now and I want us to identify. I want to do two rounds of stretching us tonight. Hey, second to last night, we had to get stretched. We're going to do two quick rounds of rapid fire. And here's the question that we're going to ask because it means that we're going to give value to what we're reading and we're going to challenge ourselves to be bold tonight. So here's the question. um, Mike Murdock says we should be willing to mentor the inexperienced around us. What are two areas you could identify at the top of your head that you can or you do give in mentorship to those who are around you? So we're doing two quick rounds. So I'm going to start first and we're going to go myself, Simone, Paula, roll, and then we're going to go again. What are two areas? And when you think about it, these are areas that you make yourself available to support, encourage, motivate, mentor, whatever it is. What are two areas? So I'm going to start. I'm just going to jump in and say academic development. Quick and simple, just like that. Simone, what about you?
It will be communication.
Communication. Good. Paula, what about you? Oh, sorry, Paula, let me help you with your microphone. Tell me that
Okay.
again.
Motherhood.
Motherhood, great.
Wow.
Roll, what about you?
Business development.
Business development, digital programming. I give my second. Simone, what about you?
Service, giving service.
Giving of service. Paula, back to you.
Love and friendship.
Love and friendship. Roll.
Sales.
Can you imagine how exciting if this was? Let's say we weren't, on camera and we had a time. If no, think about it. Let's say, Simone, you're doing a team building exercise because you identified your family as your team. Think of
Yes.
how exciting it is if you sat, in around your dining table, your living room, whatever, and you just kept going until you couldn't think of anything again. Just
Ah,
calling out the areas and the ways in which you impact others. Can you imagine the boost that would have not just on you, but the people around the table who it's like, oh, I never realized I used to do that. Such a boost in confidence it gives. And look how y'all
Yeah.
beaming to pull out your 2 points quick, 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 quick.
Yeah.
And it's so good. I think it's a really good tip, even for people, whether it's your family or your colleagues, your friends, whatever, that have a time and whether you call it rapid fire or you call it something else, have a
yes.
fun game time where you just say, okay, we're gonna go in circles or round table, and each person gonna tell me one of this about themselves. And it's such a great way to boost morale, such a great way to encourage ourselves and persons around us. So let me clap you all for participating in the little rapid fire, even though you all didn't know that little one was coming.
No, we
But
didn't.
I didn't know either. But as I was listening, I thought this would be a good activity. And it's great. It's nice when we could identify. And I
Yeah.
gave that activity so even those who would be looking on at the program could realize. And I love how Paula talked about motherhood and love and
Motherhood.
friendship, that it doesn't have to be all
Yes.
business, it doesn't have to be
Correct.
all career. You could
Mhm.
motivate and mentor in so many different areas. So I love, once again, as I always say, the diversity that the group is able to bring to those who are listening, so that those who are viewing on could say, these are the ways that I can make impact and then be motivated to do that. But I
And
have, go ahead,
Alina,
Simone.
even as you said that, I was really warmed. I was really warmed when Paula said motherhood, because sometimes people put a box or they limit what their great achievement or their great gift is. And I could tell you from my journey into motherhood, sometimes for me it wasn't a straight one. Sometimes I know I could have done with some help or some advice. So I'm really glad that Paula reminded us that motherhood was one, and then love and friendship. Oh my gosh, those things are so precious, because wherever you are in life, they are just invaluable.
It's quite true. And I think truly some people just have a gift with it, huh? I remember maybe within the last week or so, I called a girlfriend of mine and she said, "What's up?" I say, "I just call you because I know if I call you, I'll feel loved and mushy." And I felt like feeling loved and mushy. So I call you.
Yes.
And she just started to laugh. And
Yes.
she's like, "Oh, okay, cool." And we just because I always tell her, I'm like, you're my cheerful one.
The
You're the one I
magic.
call that
Yes.
I feel covered in love when I talk to you, even though it's
Mm-hmm.
Right.
just over the phone. And she's not trying. That's just who she is.
Can I interject
Everybody
though?
have their
Okay.
way, and so there's
Yeah.
value in all of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Can
I
I
want to
interject
go ahead,
before you go on? I
Paula.
just want to say that
Yes.
sometimes as well, I mean, I didn't know what was going to come for rapid fire, right? And yeah, you scare me every time. And um, when I when I thought about it, sometimes motherhood for me, um, because it's so challenging over the time. My daughter is 31, so I feel at this point, and is now a new mother. So now at this point, I can I feel like I can bridge the gap. So I can see what my parents, what they did, what they didn't do, and how I approach her, and even in not having always done right and stuff. I think we have grown into a place that we can talk the things that, and I tend to be very open and honest, to hear from her what her experiences are. And so, even when I said it, it's not something that I think about, but more and more, I am. It just is really, really precious to me, more and more. And to look at how she grows and develops. And I think sometimes you think sometimes that you're bad at
Yeah.
may not necessarily be that. And sometimes you have to be not so hard on yourself and take the good or the bad and make it great, you know? So thank you.
Definitely.
Appreciate that.
Rolla giving a little extra time for you to jump in and say everybody else had a little extra
Sit down.
contribution.
Like, it's like a
So I'm
disappearance.
giving a little extra time for you to jump in. But I do want to last night I coined a perspective when I said I want to speak to the frustration. So I want to tap into something on a more concerning that may be concerning for some that I would love, and I would love for it to be open dialogue. Mike Murdock said, be willing to mentor the inexperienced around you. But for those of us who've been reading through, we also know that in previous chapters, and I'm paraphrasing here, he talked about being wise and being mindful of who you extend yourself to and not giving yourself to people who are not going to make use of your time wisely or appreciate and so on. So I want to ask you, how do you differentiate between the inexperienced you should mentor and the inexperienced who are not going to maximize the experience of having you pour in? How do you decide who are the inexperienced you're going to make yourself available to? And I'm leaving this as an open floor question.
For me, I would think, if I think back to my own experiences, um, it will, I will, once I discern someone's willingness to learn, and you can tell someone's commitment, the level of enthusiasm, the questions that they ask, how they ask the questions, when they go back and they do their own discovery and they bring it back to you, you get a sense of when someone is committed, you know. So for me, once I get that sense of commitment, I feel inspired, you know. Sometimes that may take a little while because some persons take a little while to get started. You kind of have to jumpstart them. But once they catch on, they continue. In other words, they become a motivation for you. As you mentor and as you coach and as you work with them over time. In fact, what can happen over time is the relationship begins to change, because you begin to start really developing a partner. You start to be developing, sometimes they begin to coach you. So when you begin to see that enthusiasm and that commitment, I think that helps me to differentiate between, and I can think of some people right now as I'm talking, you understand, where You could see the commitment isn't there. You would share things and they will come back, and you could see them going round and round with the same challenges over and over again, and they're not really applying it. So that is what will help me make the distinction.
Yeah. Floor remains open.
So I will say for me, to get to that point of being ready to share with someone, there needs to be a measure of asking of permission, whether directly or indirectly. So it could be, as much as possible, I like to establish a relationship, whether it's hi, how you're doing, find a common ground that we connect on, so that you're discerning whether this person might be open to what you may want to share or not. And then if I discern that they are open, well, I will go in to a measured extent, listen to their feedback, and then I would know if I want to go further. Well, one of the things I do is I would always say, feel free if you want to touch base, if you just want to, bounce an idea off, you can always let me know, and I'm more than willing to share. So that's what I would do.
Yeah. For me, I tend to start off just really being open, and as people use the information, then I give more. So, for instance, if someone says, "Oh my gosh, I have this idea for a podcast that I would just love to do, but I don't know how to." I would say, "Oh well, the first thing you should do, you should probably want to think of this and write it down. And if you do that and you need some more help, we could talk about it some more. Say, hey, let's talk, and we talk. And then if they do that, by the time they come back, I'll know, oh, they want to go deeper. And when they come back, I'll lend it again. So if it is, we get to point J, and at point J, you just cut off. Well, hey, I cut off with you because I'm running with you. But you know what I say a lot? I can't run farther than you. So I can run with you, I could run behind you, but I can't run in front of you for your project. This is your project, it's not mine. So
Right.
because it's not my project, I can't lead it for you. But I'll be there to hold your hand, and I'll be here to push you forward. But I can't take you and drag you forward in your own thing. You have to be the one taking the lead. And so for me, in terms of like at least the way I process it, that's how I process how I lend myself to that encouraging, motivating, mentoring, whatever you want to say.
Yes.
Because I say, hey, do you want me to help you do it? I could help you build it if you want. I could help you set it up if you want. But then if the person doesn't take any steps, then I just back off. Not because there's any malice or offense. There's no offense. But my philosophy always is I cannot lead you into your own project. I can walk with you, walk behind you, but when people show me that they're taking the lead using the information that I've shared, then I know, hey, okay, I'm going to keep walking with you until you could figure out how to navigate on your own because you're now competent in that space. Paula, anything you want to share?
Well, I must admit that this is it's usually difficult for me. Um, I am the one, and it's something I've been working on actively, where in the past somebody can ask me to help them, and then I am recognizing that I am doing it for them. Um, I mean, up to today, I have to sort of I'm doing something and I'm busy because I go off trying to get it done or trying to help you get it done, and then I realize, but I'm doing it. But
Yeah.
no, uh, and so therein lies my difficulty. But I think what I've also learned to do is say, but no. And I think even when people, though inexperienced, when somebody doesn't want to do the work, what for me, and in any way, be it personal or not, you come with the same thing over and over, and we seem to be having the same conversation over and over. Then I will have that conversation with you. I will have it lovingly, but I'll have the hard one. I'll say, okay, let's stop here before we continue, because there's something that's not happening. There's a connection that's not being made. And I guess I know now in my life that I may have been that person at some point in time before for somebody else. And so they had people before me that had to take that line with me. And I love them for it because I grew from it. And so what I do now is say, well, no, I'm not, we can't move forward because you're right. I can't carry it for you. You have to do it. And I'm here to support you and to love you. But I do it very lovingly. I start off every conversation showing you that I love you. And this comes from love because I think that's important. I think that it disarms. I think once you recognize that I'm doing something out of love, then you don't, you're less, your tendency to be defensive is a whole lot less. So that's how I deal with it. But I'm also very truthful about my walk and who I've been and how I'm walking and and where I want to go. So that's how I deal with it.
Yeah, I
And
totally
even
understand.
as you raised the question, Alina, it reminded me of this proverb that says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I started off by talking about being impacted by the quote about success in business, and I use it for family. And with my children, each of them are different personalities. So even though I am sharing things with each of them, I have to wait until they are in a place where they are ready to take it and run with it. And like I am like Paula, I won't do the work for you. So if they're reading and they come to me and they say, Mommy, what is this word? And I'll say, okay, what do you think it is? Well, from that, I will get the roll eye and they know what's coming next. I
Yeah.
always tell them, I said, you need to look it up in the dictionary. So then they'll come and tell me, oh, don't worry, I think I know what it is. I said, lovely. I said, but you know what? When you read it in a dictionary, you see different meanings or you will see different contexts. And I tell them, even if I know a word, I still like to go check it in the dictionary because sometimes the way it's used in the sentence, it's different. So I definitely agree with you, Paula, because sometimes people have a way, they want to be laid back, they want to get the magic in it, but they don't want to do the work.
Work.
There's no magic, The magic is really in giving time to it. And like you said, when you go through the process, and like Alina said, isn't going through the process that you grow and you glow. So
Yeah.
you need to take time and, as a coach, you realize people are not going to grow if you just hand them it on a platter. You give them the tools and you allow them to explore the tools. And then they will see their own growth, and that will inspire them even more than if you just gave them that fish for the day rather than teach them how to fish.
I think there's a word, there's a word in Pope Francis uses, well, he introduced us to this word called graduality. And it's that people will come to their own place in their own time. And I and I think his perspective was that you needed to approach that with marry that with mercy, because then, you know, I think always I tend to always go back to me to look at, would this have happened to me in the past? And then what did I require? And what do they now in the moment require? So I think, and I've seen it. People take their time, their own time. Sometimes it could be really frustrating. Sometimes I could be really impatient. But I try to remember that people take their own time. I mean, I can't wait on people to take their own time. But what I'm saying is, as you've done, once you recognize that you've done your part, I think it's important to be patient. I think it's important to be kind. I think because you always have to remember that you weren't born in this place that you are now. You would have been a child, you would have been a teenager, so along the way you would have had these experiences. And I think once you can draw from that, it then helps you in the moment.
Even as I
Last night, sorry,
no, go
one more
ahead.
thing. Last night Or was it night before? Is it Shulin's her husband?
Hmm.
Is it David? Is his name?
Yes.
Yes.
He spoke about doing it by he spoke about tact, and he spoke about wisdom, and he spoke about taking things on a case by case basis. And I think that was wise. That is a wise thing.
Yeah. Even as I listen to you and Paula and Simone as you all talk, um, in my mind, I just reverted to this belief that I have that it's important to to show true representation of what a thing is. Because Simone, you mentioned the whole idea. Some people they look at it and they want the magic of it, but sometimes they might be wanting to put in the work. But I think there's a segment of that group that don't understand what it takes. So not wanting to put in the work is not just because they want to put in the work, it's because they didn't know because nobody ever explain the realness
Absolutely.
of it. And I could think of two examples. The first example I could pull from is just the idea of just being in business, what it means to be an entrepreneur. Typically, when people think about being an entrepreneur, they think about you do what you want when you want, and you go out and you move around a lot, and you meet all these people, and you be in these meetings. They don't think about the sleepless nights. They don't think about balancing the books. They don't think about like the cycle of your finances is very different from the way someone who is monthly paid. It's very different for the average, upcoming who is really getting into it. I'm not talking about the person who's owned the business and they have their routines. I'm talking about the person getting into it and figuring out how to balance paying yourself versus paying the bills versus this. And no, people, a lot of people don't understand that it's a whole lot more than the glam and the what did they say? Hustle and grind hard, grinding, and all these hashtags you see on social media. Listen, when 1 o'clock in the morning come and you're still trying to finish your document to send in, it's a no hashtag to make you feel good in that moment when all you want is bed.
To sleep.
Or whereas everybody, I'll give you look a simple example. Like I was chatting with you guys earlier, I think it was today, and I was saying Monday's a public holiday. I didn't even realize Monday's a public holiday because every day sometimes when you're
Yeah.
grinding it when you're
Mhm.
grinding it as the entrepreneur, your mind not on a public holiday time to have
Right.
a long weekend.
R and
Like
R.
your
Yeah.
mind is not there. But if no one ever sits a person down to really explain what that means, to really achieve a goal. I know, like when I think about my husband and how he works, we have for years, sometimes we've had schedules where we leave home 4:30 in the morning. Back then, my hair was different, and I would leave home in pajamas and curlers. I tell the truth. I would leave home in pajamas and curlers, sometimes half three, four, because he's working somewhere, Westmoreland, and we're based in the South. And I would have my suit on the rack, and my office has its own bath and everything. And so I would get to work sometimes by 4:30 in the morning, and I would get dressed and work. And he would go from that, do one job site, finish, come down south, go to Laramie, get to another job site, do that job, and then he's finishing like 11 o'clock midnight. Then he's coming to pick me up. Then we're going home. That is intense. But because of the goals we had at the time and the
Yeah.
opportunities, we made a joint decision. We're going to push and we're going to do it. But what it meant was sometimes we literally would sleep for 2 hours. What it meant that sometimes when I would be like, you know what, I don't think it makes sense going home. Better we sleep in the office. It meant that I ended up having a full stove and a full fridge at the office because we weren't home enough hours to cook or to anything. So I had a full kitchen at that building and I would cook there. I would do everything there. The only thing I would do is wash at home. And could it have been seen as exciting? Maybe. But I could tell you there's nothing exciting about sleeping for 3 hours on a couch to get up and go do it again. But that's the sacrifice we made to achieve certain goals that we had. The opportunity came and we did it. But if no one talks about it, the realness of what it's
Yes.
like, then it's difficult for people to project how to make the sacrifice or how to align themselves because they genuinely didn't know. And even the second quick example I would give is childbirth. Childbirth is song real cute. Well,
Ah.
cute. Oh, the baby grows and the belly get big, and then
Oh
and your
gosh.
water breaks. You get into pain and you get rushed to the
Mm.
hospital, and you make the child. That sound real cute. Push out one.
Oh my gosh.
Now maybe for
Right.
some it's that cute, right?
Mm.
But
And
for the
push out
average
and
person, push out
push
one.
out one that is not ready to come out because you
Mm.
have
Push out
those.
one. Then all of a sudden you realize, oh, nobody didn't tell me it was this. Nobody
Yeah,
didn't tell me.
yeah,
So I think the
yeah.
real conversations are needed as part of that
Yes.
mentorship. I say all that to say this. Real
Yeah.
conversations are needed as part of that mentorship experience because it helps the mentee, the inexperienced one, the one who is desiring to become. It helps them to understand how to position themselves to do it because they have real information to work with. Roll, you were going to say something a moment ago.
Yeah, see, this is why I am particularly passionate about training because I see the gap, Um, one of these things that, being involved in business and being a black man, I've been always trying to understand this thing about generational wealth and the whole idea of how do we pass on values that will transition from one generation to the next. And you could see the challenge. It's a real issue. So a lot of things don't go on, they don't pass on. And one of the reasons is because we don't train properly. You understand? We don't pass on these things properly. My coach, I call him my life coach, I call him my head coach, meaning my head coach, would always say that any coach or trainer or mentor should have the MBA. You understand? And if you don't have your MBA, you cannot be a coach, you cannot be a trainer. And the MBA means you must be available. All right? And if you're not available,
Yeah.
then we can't pass on these lessons and stories. You understand? And to me, it's a big challenge. In fact, when you hear the stats suggest that up to 90% of the persons who earn 90% of what's earned in one generation, by the time it reaches the third generation, it's lost
Mm.
because people want the shortcuts. They want the money, but they don't want the value. You understand? That helps to create the money. But to do that, you have to be trained. You have to put yourself under mentorship. You have to go through apprenticeship so that you can learn these things so that you can then carry it on. And the thing about this kind of mentoring is that there are no shortcuts. I mean, sometimes we may be able to provide some lessons so you don't make certain mistakes, but there are things that you just have to practice, you just have to do some lessons, some hard schools that you have to go through. And I really believe it's an area that we need to do a lot of work. Talk about, I mean, I've done a lot of work with Parenting TP, and Parenting TP has been on a mission to to provide parental training, and they've seen quite a lot of challenges. You understand? And when you get into it, you realize that parents just don't have the time. I mean, you all are very familiar with the barrel children, you know, and this whole barrel children generation is a serious thing. Parents who have gone away because they want a better life, and they send stuff for the children, and wow, yes, we have a better life, but they don't have the values, they don't have the
Yes.
training, so nothing is passed on. And then when they grow up, it's another story. So in my mind, we need to arrest. This is something that needs to be arrested. And if we don't arrest it, it will always be diluted. So every generation, every successive generation has less and less systems, less and less values, less and less training, and they become an issue that we have to now treat within society. So for me, it's a real serious issue about taking the time to mentor and be mentored. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Even Mike Murdock, he continues on looking at the mentorship experience and he says, you must take time to invest to nurture vision, knowledge, and rewards that you want the mentee to pursue. And I think that's so important. But I want to give a little highlight because the same way we differentiate and we say, hey, you could look at it from the perspective of entrepreneurship, professional, family. I'm really wanting to take a minute to allow Simone to share even about the work that she's doing or about to do in her upcoming virtual session with kids. Because sometimes we forget about the kids and we think so much about the adults, but the kids too need this type of guidance. So, Simone,
Yes.
I just want to ask you if you would please take a moment to share about the crayon initiative that you have coming in August, so that way persons would be able to get their kids involved, and they too could, and they being the kids, would be able to have that vision nurtured, gain the knowledge so that they could understand the rewards that they would want to pursue.
Sure. Thank you, Alina. So, as we know, school is set to open back in September, and that means our children are moving from the homeroom into the classroom. And I'm particularly interested in helping our students who are going into Form 1 and into Form 2, and they're going to have this whole new experience. And in their minds, they're wondering, will I fit in? I'm not just fitting into uniforms, but will I fit in with the friends that I'm going to make? Because this is the age where they're concerned about those things. And as parents, we want to know that they have that good start. So come Sunday, August the 22nd, I'm having Create Your Narrative is hosting its secondary school entrance workshop for Form 1s and Form 2s to come on board, because we know you know who you are and we want you to be able to rep your brand, right? So some of the topics we're going to look at is, how do you keep your brand lit? How do you keep on top of things, not just the schoolwork, how do you show forth the value in who you are? And also, how do I make those wise choices, right? So we're going to help students going into Form 1, going into Form 2, first time they're seeing some of their classmates face to face, and it could be a little scary. It might be a sunny day for some, it might be kind of stormy for others. So Create Your Narrative is having our first workshop for Form 1s and Form 2s comes Sunday, August 22nd on Zoom. So we want Form 1s and Form 2s to join us so that they'll feel more comfortable and to fit in when school opens in September.
Thank you for sharing that, Simone. So even as we wind down, guys, the time just went. But even as we wind down, I want to open the floor to find out what closing thoughts you would like to share as you consider the writings of Mike Murdock in chapter 30.
Well, since we're all rushing to the mic, I will just end. I think we've placed a lot of emphasis on the family, and I think that's the core of it all. You know, um, if we have strong families, then everything else in society, there's a ripple effect. So with that in mind, I would like to encourage parents, certainly as I encourage myself, to really sit and assess or reassess the family vision and the family goal, where they want to go, where they want to take the family, what they want to see, even when they are gone, what's the legacy they want to leave. And as they do that, look at whether or not the activities that they're engaged in are really giving the benefit long term, right? And I know it's a hard choice because we want to provide things, you understand? But in our quest to provide things, values could be lost, values, important values. And there's nothing like time. It's like a mother who just had a child and has to rush back out to work and has missed all the moments when the child is creeping, walking, the first words. They've missed all of that. You understand? And I think, for some of us, if you can, please sit down and reassess your time. And if you haven't done it, make sure you schedule in your time when you can be around. Get your MBA, I would say. You must be available. Get your MBA and schedule in time to just be there with your children. Simone would say, be intentional about this. Don't just be casual about it. Schedule in time with your family where you can mentor, where you can coach, and you don't have to make it a classroom. Just let it happen naturally. Once you're spending time around your children, things will come up, opportunities will come up. But make yourself available so that you can mentor and train those persons that are important to you. So that'll be my closing words.
Yeah, I really want to just piggyback off of what Roll said and just sticking with family just for a little bit longer. I want to remind parents that one of the greatest things you could ever give your children is you. And so I join with Roll. There is always a concern because, yes, we need to eat, bills need to be paid, we need clothes, we need shoes, we need all those things. Um, but you know what? At the end of it all, when they grow up and they get big, their values are not gonna come from your money. And the value is not gonna come from the sneakers that you bought for them that made them happy for 2.5 months. But the core of who they are and the building that you do in them is gonna come from what you poured into them, all of the you, all of the stories, all of the examples, all of the life illustrations that you demonstrated for them so that they would understand what kind of adult to become and how they should carry themselves. That pouring in is so important. And so I just really want to take a moment and encourage parents, give your children you, the best you, the honest you, the loving you, the correcting you, all versions of you. And as you give them you, guess what? Because you want to give them your best, that's going to be a great encouragement for you too to be the best version of yourself because you never want to give your child anything less than the best. I really wanted to encourage parents to think on that. Paula, I'm volunteering you. What closing thoughts do you have to share?
So when I was a young mother, I had my daughter at 21, and I was living in a house with my parents. So she grew up like a little sister. Um, but I'll tell you something. So I would always say to her, um, I am not always going to tell you the things that you want to hear, but I will tell you the things that you need to hear because I love you and I have your best interest at heart. So I used to drum that in her head all the time. So we fast forward till by the time, and she was an easy child. So she was really obedient, right? But then Miss Obedient turned about 16, right? 16 to 18. And she wanted to exercise her independence. And so that wasn't a great time, right? And then one day, her best friend was talking to me and she said, Auntie, Shari says to me, she's not always going to tell me the things I want to hear. And I was like, I was like, okay, I must advertise that good. But sometimes when it gets grimy and when it gets fuzzy, just keep at it because those things, Roy would have spoken, and one of the things that they don't have either, including that understanding the need for apprenticeship and for paying your dues. One of the things they also lack right now are coping skills, and I think that um, your time and yes, you're quarreling, and you and it should be in tandem. Your love ups and your quarreling have to be. They must be. You must have as many love ups set aside for the quarreling. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, though, um, once you keep at it, and that when I thought about how did I train her, that's what came to mind. And I said to her, I'm not always going to tell you the things you want to hear, but you're going to be loved, and I'm going to tell you the truth. And I think that yeah, when to hear it again, it felt that okay, you are doing something right. So keep at it, you know. So that's my takeaway.
So for me, um, There are so many billboards that we would see on the highway. There are lots of things, and on the billboard, they're advertising something pretty, something glamorous. It looks so wholesome, it's intriguing, it's inviting. And a lot of times, persons fail to realize that that is up there because of the infrastructure behind it that's holding it up. And especially for our children, like Roel said, some values get missed because, like with us in our days, we would have known about digging the dirt to put down the stakes to build up the infrastructure for that billboard to be there. But because of technology and the pace of life, things have been fast forwarded for our children. So they don't know about fixing the antenna on the TV to really try to pick up the signal, troubleshooting it, turning it this way, turning it that way. They know about taking the remote and just pressing it. And as Mike Murdock said, to get these values out, a lot of times we think, why aren't they more considerate? Why aren't they? And it's really because they don't know. They don't have the full understanding or appreciation or the experience. We really have to take the time. And as Paula mentioned, way back then, when my children were growing up, they were in the care, the protection, the love, the nurturing of their grandparents. So they actually started preschool very late, maybe 2 plus or 3, because there was no real hurry. I had books home that they would learn. And we need to remember to build that team, we have to help them to see the infrastructure that goes behind making it possible, bringing it of value, and making it stand out. And even if we take them behind the billboard so they can see it, so that they can understand it as much as is possible. But again, the teacher will appear when the student is ready. So it means we have to be patient, and we do have to keep planting the seeds and watering it and nurturing it, because there will come that time, just as Paula highlighted, and just as we all know, because we would have experienced it ourselves. There comes a time when our children will tell us what we told them. So if we take the time and the patience to sow the good seeds to them, we will reap it in the future from them. So that's what I would I would want us to remember and take away with us from this chapter.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Simone. Guys, we've come to the end of chapter 30. It's been a lovely convo this evening, and we still clapping for Paula and Common Achiever who came in studio to join with us. We still clapping for
Thank
you.
you for having me.
First, you know what it is like to have first-hand wisdom here? Oh my God.
What?
Thanks, Paula.
What?
So,
Thanks, yeah.
guys, it
Honored,
was really
honored. I
great.
feel the same
And
way.
until tomorrow, please go and
Yeah.
have a good night, and we'll be back for the finale tomorrow. Have a good night,
Woohoo.
everybody.
Bye.